The way we do our shopping is changing, and with it, the face of our cities. In a place like Aschaffenburg, for example, the effects are quite visible. While on the surface it may still appear to be quite lively, if you look more closely, you can see just how much it's suffering. There are various reasons for this. The rise of online shopping, the effects of the pandemic, and the economic downturn. Traditional stores are simply having a harder time now attracting customers, so more and more businesses are closing down with no new businesses moving in to replace them. Now, the main theme of this channel is how I see and experience Germany. So although this change is a global phenomenon, I'm obviously going to be talking about how it affects my little corner of Germany. But rather than look at Aschaffenburg, which seems to be struggling to adapt to the realities of life in the 2020s, I decided to pay a visit to Hanau. It's not an easy place to love. It is primarily an industrial city and, as such, was a prime target for Allied bombers during the Second World War and had to be rebuilt almost from scratch. Very few historic buildings survive, but two important elements were preserved. First, the original street layout was kept intact. The medieval Old City and the early Baroque New City, which you can instantly recognize from its grid layout. And second, the new modern buildings were designed to be similar in scale to the historic buildings they replaced. It seems a shame that the city, which, after all, is the birthplace of the Brothers Grimm, should end up looking so nondescript. But back in the day, the priority was to build places for people to live in as quickly as possible. But the new city makes a great shopping district, and with modern traffic being routed around it, mostly following the course of long-gone fortifications, it was easy enough to pedestrianize. I mean, I would never choose Hanau for its aesthetic appeal, but for shopping, you could do far worse. There are a few empty shops, but not as many as I found in Aschaffenburg. There is, however, one very important change that has taken place. Hanau no longer has any department stores. It used to have two. The one next to the bus station was demolished some years ago and replaced by a modern shopping centre that actually seems to be doing quite well. Certainly a lot better than this older centre out on the ring road, where half the units are empty, and as one local told me, most of the businesses that moved in there went bust. The other department store was a branch of Galeria Kaufhof, which took up the eastern side of the marketplace. And if you've been keeping up with German financial news, you'll recognize Galeria Kaufhof as the department store chain that went bankrupt several times. It's not just that department stores are now falling out of fashion, or that the company simply failed to adapt to changing habits, although both of those things are true. It was the collapse of the parent company, the Austrian company Signa Holding, as it accumulated debts of over 2 billion euros. And it may not be entirely down to economic forces. Put it this way, Signa Holding's founder René Benko was supposed to appear before a committee of the Austrian Bundestag in order to answer questions, but this had to be cancelled because he now faces so many criminal charges, he literally cannot be expected to keep track of them all. Once one of Austria's richest men, he's now being described as an ex-billionaire, all of which leaves Hanau with a big, empty glass and concrete shell in the heart of the city itself. A few decades ago, some other department store might have moved in, but that's not likely to happen now, and so the city has taken matters into its own hands by buying the property for 25 million euros. But now what? Obviously, Hanau will want to do something sensible and sustainable with the property. The last thing it needs is a lost place right in the middle of its shopping district. To that end, it expects to spend another 40 million euros converting it into what exactly? The city wants to avoid the cheap solution of just giving it a lick of paint, adding some basic furnishings and calling it a day. It does not want people walking in to find themselves in a flea market. In the words of the manager of Hanau Marketing, it has to be Instagrammable, which is not at all easy with the type of architecture typically associated with post-war department stores, such as this example in the city of Neuss or this one in East Berlin. At the same time, though, Hanau has set itself a very very ambitious target. Keen to avoid a long period of nothingness, it hopes that whatever the building is turned into, it can open by this autumn. Ideas are still being collected and very carefully considered, but it will probably look something like this. On the ground floor, a number of pop-up stores, and in the middle, a large area with a stage for lectures, plays, and musical performances. The basement could have some sort of club, and the top floor a rooftop bar, and the rest could be used for classrooms or offices. To be clear, Hanau is not the only German city looking for new and innovative ways of using suddenly empty buildings, but it has somehow managed to find itself in the spotlight. Last year, the German Council of Shopping Places published an article suggesting that Hanau's approach is unique, which, if this project fails, is going to be really embarrassing for everyone concerned. One thing has definitely been decided, though: the new name. This is a short list of suggestions sent in by members of the public, and it's going to be one of these 6. The decision has already been made, but won't be announced until the 23rd of April. So nobody yet knows exactly what's going to happen to this place, but it does have a name, which I suppose says something about the priorities set by the Hanau City Council. Flea market. In the words of the manager of Hanau, which is not easy to pronounce, looks something like this. On the ground floor, blah, blah, blah.